and March 9. I think the February 13 were amended a couple of times, but I would make yes, Representative Neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ranking Neighbor.
Welcome
home.
Thank you. I would move that we pass these amazing minutes out for for February 13th with the corrections, March the 2nd and March the 9th.
Okay, do I have a second? Second by Representative Chauncey. He beat you to it, Kurt. Sorry. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Very good. The minutes are approved. All right, committee, we have a couple of things on the agenda today, and I'm going to go a little bit out of order. First off, just so that he doesn't have to sit around with us, even though we love his presence, let's go ahead and open the hearing on SB 422. And to get us up to speed on SB 422, also called the Gypsy Agent Bill. I made that up myself. All right. Go ahead and get us up to speed, Eileen. I did read it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, committee. Senate Bill 422 reorganizes certain provisions relating to foreign insurance companies seeking authorization to do business in Kansas. It authorizes the Department of Insurance to revoke the licensure of a non-resident agent without notice and opportunity for a hearing, and requires agents and public adjusters to respond to inquiries from the Commissioner within 14 calendar days. The bill was sponsored by the Senate Committee on Financial Institutions and Insurance and passed the Senate Committee of the Whole unanimously on February 18th. Section 1 of the bill amends KSA 40-209 relating to foreign insurance companies seeking authorization to do business in Kansas. The amendment to this section occurs in subsection B, stating that subsidiary and affiliate companies with substantially the same management as an admitted company, a continuing corporation resulting from a merger or consolidation, or certain companies whose admission is determined by the Commissioner to be in the public interest, do not have to submit an examination report of its financial condition and affairs, or have to have been in business for at least 3 years and have had a financial examination conducted. Section 2 of the bill amends KSA 40-4906 and would allow the department to revoke the license of a non-resident agent without notice and a hearing. 30 days after the Commissioner receives notification that the non-resident agent no longer holds a license in the agent's home state. Section 3 of the bill amends KSA 40-4909 pertaining to disciplinary actions that can be taken against an applicant or a licensee if the applicant or licensee has committed certain acts. And the amendment to this section would add failed to respond to an inquiry from the Commissioner within 14 calendar days concerning a complaint or an inquiry relating to a certain matter. Section 4 of the bill amends KSA 5510 and makes the same amendment as the previous section, but this time it's in the statute, licensing statute relating to public adjusters. The Senate Committee on Financial Institutions and Insurance amended the bill to require the Commissioner of Insurance to notify non-resident agents within 30 days of revoking the non-resident agent's license notifying the non-resident agent that such agent's license has been revoked, and to further state that nothing in the subsection could be deemed to confer the right to a hearing for any non-resident agent whose license has been revoked. And if approved, 422 would become effective on its publication in the statute book. And with that, Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions.
Excellent. Yes, Representative Bergquist has a question.
Thank you. Hey, does foreign and non-resident and insurance, does that refer to anything not Kansas?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Thank you. I have another question later, but it'll be when I figure it out. Thank you.
All right, Representative Brunk.
If we do this again, personal request, do this like at 60 miles an hour, reading instead of like 80 miles an hour. That went by zing. So I'm tracking with you, but that was really, really fast.
I had actually requested 120, so.
You know, when the RPMs, I'm a 33 playing at 45. Yes, see, the people who remember those are old enough to.
Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and that was fantastic, by the way, your summary, and I'll say that every time for the rest of the session. But I've never asked this, I'm just curious, when it says 30 days, does that default to calendar days, or if it's not specifically described, or can it be discussed?
It depends. Yeah, we've seen it. The courts would end up having to decide if it was something under contention that was a serious matter. That's why we like to specify calendar or business days when we're asked to draft something, because it does make a difference.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, seeing no further questions. Yes, Representative Bergquist, question number 2.
Is Lloyd's of London considered foreign when it's a specialty insurance situation?
Yeah, it would be considered foreign. It's a reinsurance company.
Okay, all right, that's all I got.
It's the of London part that gives it away.
Even if it were London, Canada, it'd still be a foreign insurance company.
All right, further questions for Eileen? Seeing none. All right, thank you very much. We have a grand total of 1 proponent for SB 422. I'll open proponent testimony and hear from the Department of Kansas Insurance Department, KID. I thought it was KID. Oh, no, it's, okay, sorry. Kansas Department of Insurance. I want to make sure I have the title right this year. All right, thank you. Eric Turek.
You got it right,
Take it away.
Mr. Chairman. Eric Turek with the Kansas Department of Insurance, pleased to provide proponent testimony on Senate Bill 422. As the chairman stated at the beginning, this is a licensing bill, principally a licensing bill. And I'll go at perhaps a 35-mile-an-hour coast. I'll go a little bit out of order just for simplicity purposes. Start with some more minor aspects of the bill and work towards the more the meat of the bill. So in the insurance regulatory world, there are domestic companies. Those are domiciled in Kansas or whatever other state you're referencing. Foreign companies are domiciled in any other state or U.S. territory, and alien companies are domiciled outside of the country. For domestics, they are subject to what I'll call intense financial or solvency scrutiny. Foreign companies, before they are authorized to do business here, they've already been through that scrutiny with their home regulator, although there are some other qualifications that they need to satisfy. Specifically for subsidiaries and affiliates of bona fide insurance companies, there's a small conflict within our foreign company admission statutes. We just request a very, very small cleanup on that. Moving on to the agent side of things. You all may be familiar with the 14 calendar days that you all required for insurance companies to respond to consumer complaints. The bill last year for Senate Bill 42 had the agent portion as well, although the conference committee report with all of its policy provisions, the agent piece just fell through the cracks. So a part of this bill would require public adjusters and the insurance agents to also meet that 14 calendar day time frame to respond to complaints submitted to the Department of Insurance. So the companies, the agents, and the public adjusters would have one uniform responsibility to respond. The non-resident portion and the bulk of this bill concerns non-resident agents, and the licensees or the agents on the committee would be more familiar with this than most. But there are 2 types of insurance agent licenses. There's resident and non-resident, and you are a resident license. You have a resident license wherever you sell and wherever you reside, and you can sell insurance in that state. And you can have a non-resident license in every single other state and territory you want to sell. And it's incredibly easy to become a non-resident agent as long as you have that resident license, thanks to the reciprocal licensing system across the country. One of the prime requirements of that reciprocal system is that you do maintain that resident license. That's almost, at the end of the day, that's almost the core requirement. There are cases where an agent fails to maintain that resident license. It could be for any reason. It could be that they failed to respond to that commissioner within 14 calendar days. It could just be that they forgot to get their CE done. Whatever it is, there is a requirement in Kansas and a whole bunch of other states that you have to maintain that resident license, and if you don't, after a certain period of time, we have to move to revoke. And I'm glad that none of the agents on this committee are familiar with the revocation process, that they are not familiar, because if we fully revoke an agent, then you can't apply again for 2 years. You have to retake the examinations, you have to repay the fees, et cetera. And the licensees who, there are a whole bunch of reasons why we revoke. It could be anything from, it can be a whole bunch of crimes and things like that. For the instances of when a non-resident agent fails to maintain their resident license, we really see that as a technicality. It doesn't, you know, during the revocation process, there must be a hearing as well. And so this bill would, first of all, eliminate that. You know, when we have a hearing in this particular case, there's nothing necessarily to be heard about. The issue lies only with the other state, with their resident state. It has nothing to do with Kansas. So this is actually a lot more simple for the department, but also a lot more simple for the non-resident agent. Additionally, with these specific cases, we've amended the statute to provide that if we do revoke these agents who fail to maintain their license, for this very, very small sect of agents, that 2-year moratorium on reapplication wouldn't apply. Just for these small agents, you know, what we don't want to have happen is someone, a Missouri resident agent, loses their license or it lapses, whatever it may be, for 1 day too long, and then we move to revoke. We do revoke, they fix their issue 1 day later in their home state. Meanwhile, they can't sell in Kansas again for 2 years. So this is really just an efficiency measure, if I could be brief. This past, what's that? That ship is sailing. Sorry. Maybe I should have led with that. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. This past 40-0, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
All right, committee, any questions for Eric? Yes, Representative Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eric, how many out-of-state agents are there in Kansas, or how many folks do you deal with this type of license?
So we have about 20,000 resident agents, and we have about 210,000 non-resident agents. Every month when we get the specific number of agents who fail to maintain their resident license somewhere else, wherever it is, for whatever reason, it could be anywhere from a couple hundred a month to less than 100. Again, I think a lot of these agents fix their issue relatively quickly. This just really speeds up the process and ensures that agents who maybe made a mistake in their home state, they're able to resume their license. They're able to reinstate their licensure.
All right, Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eric, thanks for being here, and thanks for the presentation. So what happens if, part of this bill is reciprocity, so if an agent moves from another state to Kansas, do they automatically get a license in Kansas if they've been licensed in another state as part of that? Or do they have to take a test and go through the classes?
Mr. Chairman, as long as you have a valid license in another state, I don't believe that you have to take the test again. Now, if one is revoked, I might have to check with our staff on that question. But when you do move, on the exam part, but when you do move across state lines, you do have, I think it's 30 days in Kansas to announce the new residency in Kansas.
Okay, and your license is automatic if you're licensed?
As far as I'm aware, I will double check on that.
I think he means if you have a reciprocal
thank you.
license.
Yeah, I'm not aware on the exam part. I don't believe that you have to retake the exam if you're applying for. There might be some agents in the room who might be able to better speak to that, or the KAIA, but I don't believe so.
All right. Further questions for the lone proponent, Eric Turek? Seeing none. All right, we have one question for you to bring back to us, but otherwise, I think we're good to go. All right, I have no one else listed as a proponent. If you'd like to speak as a proponent, this would be a great time. Seeing none, I'll close proponent testimony. Open either neutral or opponent, whichever. If you want to jump up, I have no one listed. Feel free to take the mic if you'd like to be in either one of those categories. All right, seeing none, I'll close neutral and opponent testimony and close the hearing on SB 422. Now, committee, we have an informational hearing. We've already passed turnaround, as you may notice, but HB 2684 was in our committee. We did not get to it this year, but I think it brings up some interesting issues for us to think about in the interim, so I wanted to have an informational hearing on that. Eileen, if you could get us up to speed on HB 2684, I'll open the hearing. You know, we've got time. Take it down to 70, you'll be all right.
Mr. Chair, I don't even drive 70 miles an hour. I'm just unable to do that. Thank you,
I know,
Mr.
it's too slow,
Chair
I get it.
and members of the committee. House Bill 2684 would create a mandate for every individual or group insurance policy, medical service plan, contract, hospital service corporation contract, hospital and medical service corporation contract, fraternal benefit society, or health maintenance organization that provides coverage for accident and health services and is delivered, amended, or renewed on or after January 1st, 2027. So it would require those insurers to provide coverage for prescription insulin drugs, devices, and diabetes management. I will note that even though the bill creates a mandate, the bill itself is exempt from the provisions of the test track. Under the provisions of the bill, the most that a covered person would be required to pay for a 30-day supply of any type, quantity, number of prescriptions of insulin would be $35, and the most that a covered person would be required to pay for a 30-day supply of devices per month would be $100. Additionally, the bill would require each insurer to cover at least one type of prescription insulin drug in the categories listed on page 1 in lines 25 through 32. The bill would require each insurer to provide an appeals process for covered persons who are unable to take one or more of the prescription insulin drugs described. Finally, the bill requires the Commissioner of Insurance to adopt rules and regulations necessary to implement the provisions of the bill, and it also requires the Board of Healing Arts to adopt rules and regulations that establish training requirements for healthcare providers providing diabetes self-management education. And with that, Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions.
All right, there was a lot to unpack there in a much shorter period of time. All right, committee questions regarding HB 2684 from the reviser? Yes, ranking neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed in your reviser breakdown that you said this would not be covered by mandates, but we do have a law. I see it was taken out of this, but do you have a copy of that?
Actually, I do. The test track process, just for all the committee members, is a 3-statute grouping that one, before a bill creating an insurance mandate is to be drafted, requires the individual requesting the bill to go through, request from the Department of Insurance some data creating a socioeconomic impact report. So that's KSA 40-2248. KSA 40-2249 lists what's supposed to be in the report, and then once that report gets turned in to typically the committee chair, who then notifies the reviser for the committee that, okay, you can start drafting the bill now. The bill gets drafted. If it's enacted, the mandate goes through a 1-year test track process tested within the state employee health plan. After a year and the mandate's been through the test track for a year, the state employee health plan generates a report on its own with a bunch of data that pertains to how many people use that benefit, what the cost was it affordable, did it increase costs, did it decrease costs for the patient. That data is all more patient-centric than, say, the insurance transparency bill that we heard last week. It's more patient-focused. If the test track, or if the employee health plan decides that it hasn't been used, that mandate hasn't been used enough and they need more data, they have the ability to recommend another year through the test track process to gather more data to, develop that information. Just because I'm always on the road preaching the gospel of the test track process, I do have copies of the 3 statutes. If you'd like, Mr. Chair, I can distribute them when I'm done.
I think that sounds fantastic. Now, I wanted to clarify, though, one thing that you said is that the report comes back regarding the patient cost. Does that also, and I'm doing this from memory, does it also include the impact on insurance rates for the members of the state employee health plan?
No, actually, as I said, it's all pretty much patient-focused, and when I hand out those statutes, you can see it's KSA 40-2249. What is included, good grief, what's included in that report, the extent to which the treatment or service is generally utilized by a significant portion of the population, the extent to which insurance coverage is already generally available. If the coverage isn't generally available, the extent to which the lack of coverage results in persons being unable to obtain necessary healthcare treatment. And if the coverage, again, is not generally available, the extent to which the lack of coverage results in unreasonable financial hardship on those persons needing treatment, the level of public demand for the treatment or service, the level of public demand for individual or group insurance coverage for the treatment or service, the level of interest of collective bargaining organizations in negotiating privately for inclusion of this coverage, in group contracts, the impact of indirect costs, which are costs other than premiums and administrative costs, on the question of costs and benefits of coverage. And then for financial impact, it's the extent to which insurance coverage of the kind proposed would increase or decrease the cost of the treatment or the benefits of coverage. So again, it's all, the other bill complements the whole picture in that it provides the actual premium and provider kind of insurance, the employer considerations. This is actually more patient-centric, as I said.
Very good. Makes an excellent case for the bill that we handed out last week. All right, very good. Further questions for the revisor regarding 2684? We got all the right numbers. What the heck? Yes, Representative Bergkamp. Vice Bergkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you know if any states just tie it to the Medicare rate as opposed to putting like the rate in statute? So that way, like if prices would escalate quickly.
I don't know. You have 2 friendly researchers who can probably assist you with getting that information.
And I guess my only concern would be like if we're at a session and hyperinflation kicks in and all of a sudden it's $1,000 or whatever. That's my only concern with putting like a finite dollar in statute, so thank you.
All right, further questions from the committee? Seeing none. All right, you're off the hook. That was easy. All right, I'll now open proponent testimony. In person, we have, well, first off, Representative Steens. I'd like to address the committee. Welcome to Insurance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Chair Sutton, Vice Chair Bergkamp, Ranking Representative Neighbor, and members of the House Committee on Insurance, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to submit oral testimony in support of HB 2684. HB 2684 addresses a life or death issue for thousands of Kansans. The high cost of insulin and diabetes management supplies. Both my husband and my nephew live with type 1 diabetes. They rely on insulin every single day to survive. Insulin costs have skyrocketed over the years, and long patent protections, limited competition, and gaps in insurance coverage make it extremely difficult for families to afford this essential medication. Some people without insurance have even had to ration their insulin, putting their lives at serious risk. Beyond the immediate dangers, the long-term health and financial effects of managing diabetes, which include hospital visits, complications, and ongoing costs for devices and supplies, are substantial and can overwhelm families. HB 2684 would provide meaningful relief by capping out-of-pocket costs at $35 for a 30-day supply of insulin. And I'm just going to show you, I know we can't use props, but a little vial of insulin looks like this, okay? Right now, that's $250 to $325 at most insurance, so at most pharmacies. So can you imagine if someone needs a vial? My husband uses 1 to 2 vials, so that's $700 just for 2 little vials of insulin. That doesn't include all the other costs. It ensures coverage of multiple insulin types, provides access to diabetes self-management education, and establishes an appeals process if a patient cannot take a covered insulin. So this bill allows Kansans with diabetes to live safely, manage their condition effectively, and maintain dignity without facing financial ruin. As policymakers, you can make a real impact on the lives of thousands of Kansans living with diabetes. By supporting HB 2684, you can help families access life-saving medication, reduce financial stress, and improve long-term health outcomes for people across this state. For my family and countless of others, this is not just policy, it is survival. And I respectfully ask this committee to support this bill. And I appreciate your consideration, and thousands of Kansans and my loved ones do also. And I'd be happy to stand for questions. One other thing, if you don't mind me mentioning, Mr. Chair, is part of the problem is few companies control this market. So you have Eli Lilly, you have Novartis, and you have Sanofi. They make 90% of these insulins, so that limits competition, okay? And they have patents, I've read, up to 37 years in some cases. So it makes it very difficult for other independent pharmacies or drug manufacturers to compete. Also, pharmacy benefit managers negotiate these rebates, these PBMs. They encourage companies to raise the official price, which hits patients, and they have to pay high deductibles. And even though insulin has existed for over a century, in fact, the gentleman who founded it sold the patent for $4. Okay, so remember that, $4. And most people have to take analog versions, which is the one I was explaining to you. That is anywhere. They can't take synthetic kinds of insulin, okay? So this is something they have to take. So lack of price regulation, unlike other countries, the US does not set limits on drug prices. So this allows these list prices to climb far above manufacturing costs. Used to be, when my husband was first diagnosed, he paid $25 to $30 for that vial of insulin. Now, $250 to $300 in some cases. And to me, that is just unacceptable. Medicare, I think you asked this, is capped, Representative Bergkamp. So Medicare did cap it at $35 per month for covered insulin. Right now, we also have some states that have done that as well for 30 days supply, which is what we're talking about here. But if you talk about just that and all the other chronic things that come along with that and all the supplies, it can add up quite quickly. So thank you for allowing me to testify, and I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
All right, we can hold off our questions until we get through the proponent testimony and then just kind of throw jump balls out to whoever would like to grab our questions. Next up, as a proponent, I have Kirsten Georgeson with MHA. Kristen, welcome to committee.
Thank you all for having me. My name is Kirsten Georgeson, and I've had type 1 diabetes for 25 years. I rely on insulin, an insulin pump, and a continuous glucose monitor to stay alive. Type 1 diabetes is not a preventable disease. It was only a few days before my 3rd birthday when I was diagnosed. The problem that we're here to talk about today is that people with insurance are struggling, and people without insurance are dying. Insulin isn't the only issue. There are plenty of other costs associated with being type 1 diabetic. I'm lucky enough to obtain health insurance. Last year, not including insurance premiums, I still spent a total of $2,500 in 2025. My health insurance pays 90% of everything after my deductible. So with that math, those without insurance are paying upwards of $25,000 per year for the exact same care. Insulin, along with other prescription drugs these manufacturers produce in the United States, is more costly than anywhere else in the world for the exact same product. To type 1 diabetics, these supplies are as essential as water. Prior to the federal Medicare and private insurance price caps in 2024, the list price of analog insulin, just in the United States, had risen over 1,000% in the previous 2 decades. However, a survey was completed by Type 1 International using data from 2024 after the price caps went into effect. In the United States, half of respondents said they had to ration insulin or testing supplies in the last year, and only 34% spent $35 or less per month on insulin, despite promises from lawmakers and pharmaceutical companies. In fact, respondents spent around $400 a month on insulin and glucose self-monitoring supplies. Even as pharmaceutical companies promote price reductions and assistance programs, many people with diabetes remain trapped in a system where staying alive requires significant financial sacrifice to afford insulin and essential supplies. The overall assessment of price gouging in the U.S. suggests that the United States is one of the most developed countries with a lack of access to most healthcare services and medications, a greed for money, and a government with few laws or regulations regarding the price gouging of prescriptions. The fact that profit is being prioritized over a patient's well-being is evident and unethical. I was a sophomore in college, maybe 19 years old, when I went to the pharmacy to pick up my insulin by myself for the first time. I was learning how to take care of myself, manage my life, and manage my chronic life-threatening illness at 19 years old. I stepped up to the pharmacy counter. The pharmacist looked at the screen, then looked back at me with the same worried look that now I realize they all have. She asked, "Are you aware of the price of your medication?" I knew it was expensive, and I was fortunate enough to have insurance, but I didn't realize the extent of it. Now, for 7 of these little vials, she said, "That'll be $800 with insurance." Now, that may not seem like much to you right now, but I froze. $800? I'm in college. That was twice my monthly rent. I could barely afford groceries. I won't get my life-saving medication today. Will I ever be able to afford this, or will I spend my life drowning in debt? Or worse. I walked out of the pharmacy sobbing. I was embarrassed, I was scared, and I was realizing for the first time that in this country, staying alive is something you have to afford. And if you can't, well, then you don't get to. More recently, my place of employment has switched insurance providers. Because of the switch, the mode of insulin and supplies that I've been using for the last 25 years is inaccessible due to the new plan not covering it. Despite efforts from my doctors and sending in prior authorizations, I'm unable to afford the vials of insulin and pump supplies that I've been using my entire life. This brings up another point that insurance companies should not dictate what I need to survive and what I don't. It made me see how broken our healthcare system really is, how it leaves people like me behind, people who did not ask to be sick and who did not choose to need medicine just to survive. If you're wondering how this is still happening in the wealthiest country in the world, so am I. So I'm asking you, please take into consideration House Bill number 2684 by Committee on Insurance, requested by Representative Meyer. As of today, there are no legal implications or regulations that truly contain the cost of medication or supplies required for type 1 diabetes. This delay in enacting meaningful change exacerbates the challenges faced by those who rely on insulin to manage their diabetes. Because pharmacy benefit managers play a critical role in managing drug benefits for insurers, there needs to be more oversight and more regulations on the negotiations and kickbacks that are being made that entice them to raise the price of insulin. There's a need for laws and regulations to be put in place to stop the unfair negotiations which are causing the unaffordability of insulin. In addition, the government needs to be able to have a say in the negotiation of insulin prices and price caps. Federal and state government need to consider utilizing their ability and advocacy to decrease prices, taxes on essential drugs, and create plans to fair access to insulin. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, questions for Kristen? Yes, ranking neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said that you've now changed over to another insurance, right? How are you getting by? Have they approved it yet? Have they not approved it?
So it's not approved. What I have to do is I have to use a different mode of insulin. So instead of using the vials that I've used for the last 25 years, I have to use an insulin pen.
Okay.
And then as far as pump supplies, luckily I have some extra that I'm able to use throughout the year, but once that's done, I just use the pen.
I'm sorry, Mary. How long does your pump last?
The physical pump or the supplies?
The physical pump?
Physical pump has a 4-year warranty.
4-year. And so which form would go, which pen are you using now?
It's a Novolog insulin pen.
Okay. Does it keep you pretty well regulated?
Yes, but once I don't have the pump supplies anymore, then it will be multiple daily injections rather than utilizing the insulin pump to constantly provide insulin.
Because you're a brittle diabetic, right?
Right, so it will be more manual, which will affect my control of the glucose.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, further questions from the committee? Seeing none, I think they're letting you off easy. Oh, yes. Oh, never mind. Hold on. Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony and for your advocacy and the story. I have several relatives, my niece for one that has type 1, and so it impacted me. And the one aha was the 1,000% the cost has increased. And so then I'm reading the article that you based that on, and I wonder if you could maybe give us a little bit of a story or tell us, like, because some, like the majority of those surveyed have only partial insurance. Tell us how they balance out, like they have to, like, they only can afford a handful. So maybe one day they'll go with and one day will go without. Have you experienced that? Or can you tell stories about how people manage the affordability of this when they can only afford so much?
Yeah. I have several people that I know who have had to ration insulin. They've had to go without. They've been into DKA, which then of course sends them to the hospital.
DKA?
Diabetes ketoacidosis. Okay. It's a coma or die situation. Your blood sugar goes high, you don't get the insulin, your blood sugar goes too high, you end up in the hospital, more medical bills. And you go into a coma and you can potentially die from that. And that is how people die due to insulin rationing. I have people that I know who they can only afford a Dexcom. They cannot afford a pump as well. I've been fortunate enough to where I've been able to afford that, and that is one reason why I'm here advocating today.
Mr. Chair, one more. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to read, but I didn't get to it. Is there an explanation of why 1,000% increase? And there's also an impact from COVID I see in this article, but I was wondering if you could tell us that.
Simply price gouging. The big 3 insulin manufacturers, Novo Nordisk, Sanofi, and Eli Lilly, just agreed for money.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yes, Representative Wagoner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question. Just doing a little checking online. So supposedly, I mean, this became a particularly big issue in 2022, and there was some federal, legislation at least talked about, and that supposedly Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, and Sanofi all did massive price cuts back then. I mean, did they, or what? How did that affect you?
Right. So yes, there was some where the list price, in 2023, my list price of insulin for 7 vials was $2,500. That will last me 3 months. They did do a bit of a price cut, but I mean, it's still completely unaffordable. Like I said, prior to the federal Medicare and private insurance caps, The list price of analog insulin had risen over 1,000% in the previous 2 decades. However, a survey was completed by Type 1 International using data from 2024 after the price caps went into effect, also after the big three had promised to lower the cost of insulin. In the United States, half of respondents said they had to ration insulin or testing supplies in the last year, even after those. And only 34% spent $35 or less per month on insulin, despite promises from lawmakers and pharmaceutical companies.
Committee, further questions? Not sure if one's coming out of this conversation or not. No? Okay. Very good. Thank you. All right. The next live proponent, I don't view WebEx as a live, but anyway, our next live proponent is Nathan Pettingill. Close enough to recognize it anyway. Welcome to committee, Nathan.
I'll try to be brief, as people have already covered some of my main points. Representative Sutton, Representative Neighbors, Representative Bergkamp, members of the committee, thanks a lot for making time for this. The fact that we're having a hearing, even beginning to talk about this, is very important in itself. It's meaningful to Type 1 communities. I submitted written testimony that talks about some of the numbers, the cost, the impact, how many Kansans it affects. What I want to concentrate on right now is kind of the non-quantitative aspects, some of that Kristen talked about, and that's the impact and the symbolic importance of having this bill, symbolic importance of moving forward for the future of Kansas, and particularly for younger generations. As a parent of a Type 1 individual, patient, and then someone who's worked with Type 1 students in my work, I've been around them and I've seen what Type 1 students can do and what the Type 1 community is capable of doing. Type 1 is, as I understand from your questions, very sophisticated knowledge, you probably already know this. It's an autoimmune disease that manifests in children, usually about middle school age, sometimes a little bit older, and it absolutely turns your life around. It saps energy, it saps personality, it saps everything. And for the family, it upsets your daily routines. You have to reimagine how you're going to pay for medications. You're going to have to reimagine schedules. You're going to have to reimagine how your kid integrates and interacts their friendships and their activities. It is a life-changing moment for kids with Type 1 diabetes. Now, the good parts about this is there's been amazing medical advances like the pump system, even the pens, that have enabled the Type 1 individuals to live very good and productive lives. When you get Type 1, when you're first diagnosed, and imagine most of these are middle school students that I've talked with and that we've seen in our cohorts, you're going to the hospital, you're treated, and you're sent home either with a vial or a pen system of insulin medication. You're told how much dosage you take, and you're basically told, here's the optimum amount. You got to prick your fingers to figure it out. Good luck, kid. If you take too much, you die. If you take too little, you die. Go for it. And that's an incredible experience. But these kids who go through that, they learn how to advocate for themselves. They learn how to figure out costs. They learn how to budget their medication if they need to. They have an empathy for others. They emerge as mature adults with the ability to navigate life and the ability to advocate for themselves and others as some of the most talented, focused, disciplined individuals. So that's what I want to concentrate on. When we talk about what we want as a future for Kansas and what we want to bring to other generations, we should look at doing symbolic bills like this, which have real impact. I agree, real impact, and they're proven impact because they've been adopted in states all across the U.S., from Utah to West Virginia. But bills like this send a message. Just by talking about this, you're sending a message. You have expertise, I can tell from your questions. You have wisdom, collective wisdom, where you may amend and improve this bill. That's wonderful. But the fact that we're putting it forward sends a message to students, sends a message to families that this is a state that's willing to acknowledge them, that's willing to promote legislation that affects their ability to open businesses, to continue on farms, and to continue living in Kansas and to choosing it for their education. We recruit sports teams, that's great. We recruit businesses, that's great. We should also focus on recruiting young, talented youth. And this is one way that sends a very important, powerful message to young people with Type 1 diabetes as they plan their future and as their families plan their future around them. Representative Burkett, you asked a great question about the cost and the inflationary aspects of the cost. What could we do? And I think that's an important one. I encourage things like that. I think it's also important to realize right now is that there's no protection from the other end. When you go to pick up your medicine, you're given a number. And as Kristen explained, it's set. You have no negotiation. We've been so many times at the Hy-Vee pharmacy where they said, a bill that we're expecting to be $35 is now $248, and you pay that. There's nothing you can do. So I welcome the ability to regulate against inflationary protectors, to protect the providers, but also to protect the customers. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks so much for the questions you've already given. Thank you so much for recognizing the importance of this bill and for even bringing it to discussion today. Appreciate it.
Right. Committee questions for Mr. Pettengill.
Cheers.
They must have gotten it all out of their system. All right. Very good. All right, the next proponent, I have two proponents via WebEx. First off, I have Michael Glassner with Americans for Lower Drug Prices. Michael, are you with us?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Chairman Sutton, Vice Chairman Bergkamp, Ranking Member Neighbor, members of the committees. I thank you for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of Americans for Lower Drug Prices, ALDP, before your committee. And we're in support of House Bill 2684. I submitted a written testimony. I'm just going to touch on a few of the highlights here, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. As a co-founder of ALDP, we're a nonpartisan, not-for-profit focused solely on reducing the prices of unaffordable medications for all. I'm here today to express my strong support for the intent of this legislation, which is capping the price of insulin. At ALDP, we amplify the patient voice in order to hold drug manufacturers accountable for their high list prices and to help ensure access for vulnerable and rural Americans, of which I am formerly one. I'm calling in from New Jersey, but I grew up in the big city of Peabody, Kansas, and I'm a graduate of the University of Kansas. Early in my career, right out of college, I was fortunate enough to work for Senator Bob Dole of Kansas for over 12 years. During that time, I got to travel extensively with him. Extensively. We went to 105 counties in Kansas a couple of times. We went to 99 counties in Iowa a couple of times. That's a different story. And I traveled all over the country and the world with him. But, you know, Senator Dole was one of the great champions of rural America in the U.S. Senate for decades throughout his entire career. And I really learned a lot about the dignity and courage of hardworking Americans by watching Senator Dole. He also, you know, had acute sensitivities to people with medical issues and disabilities as he lived with, you know, egregious wounds from World War II his entire life. Later in my career, up until currently, I've had the privilege of serving in senior roles in all three of President Trump's campaigns. And I traveled all over the country with the president over the past 10 years. And we had a lot of connections with patients, small businesses, described the impossible choices they face because of high drug prices. And many times on the trail, people would pull Mr. Trump aside, talk about the rising costs of healthcare, and insulin was a major issue all over the country. So it's really not, you know, we're talking about the great state of Kansas now, but it's an issue everywhere. According to the American Diabetes Association, approximately 38 million people in the U.S. have diabetes. In Kansas, the number is around 244,000 adults that have been diagnosed, which represents an astounding 11% of the adult population. As a matter of fact, it's consistently in the top 10 causes of death in our state. For patients with diabetes, insulin is must-have life-sustaining medication. Yet in the past decade, as other speakers have noticed, out-of-pocket expense have doubled just in the past few years. 1 in 4 insulin-dependent patients still rations insulin due to costs. And we know that caps can help, but only where they exist. So that's why we're advocating for a cap here in the state of Kansas. Capping those price of insulin will provide much needed relief to those not yet eligible for Medicare and to those most financially burdened today. So one great thing about the language in House Bill 2684 is that it will help another previously untouched segment of our population, uninsured people, underinsured, Kansans with disabilities, and especially those on low and fixed incomes and working families, all of whom, comprise a lot of the people I grew up with in Peabody. So we know that the federal government, under the president's leadership, is deeply engaged on the issue of monopoly pricing more than any president, Republican or Democrat. Last month, Trump RX was launched, which provide access to some of the nation's leading drugs at discounted prices. President Trump has also secured voluntary most favored nations agreements with at least 15 pharmaceutical companies to align U.S. drug prices with lower international rates. Finally, we at ALDP would urge lawmakers in Kansas to go a step further and consider creating a Prescription Drug Affordability Board, or PDAB, with upper price limit authority. We can look to 12 other states, such as Colorado, Ohio, New Hampshire, and just this year, Virginia, have passed PDABs as easily replicable models. And some states cannot wait for Washington to act on rising drug prices, obviously, and I appreciate the opportunity to address you on this important topic. I just like to add one personal note. My father was a proud veteran of the U.S. Navy and served in World War II, and he had type 2 diabetes. So I'm very familiar with diabetes and what impact it can have on everyday health of Americans. And so this issue is very close to my own heart. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
All right, committee, yes, Representative Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for providing testimony today on this bill. I really appreciate it. You had noted that there are other states in the country who have passed legislation similar to this. Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I sure can. So, PDABs, or Prescription Drug Affordability Boards, have been established by statute in a number of states all across the country. And what it does is different laws have different applications, but it established a board of directors that can set limits on the prices of certain drugs. So the most egregious pricing by some of the pharmaceutical companies can be addressed at the state level. So they adjudicate, the pricing that's available for reimbursements for the state employees. And so it sets, the drug companies, obviously, they're not going to stop their behavior. They're going to continue to raise prices as much as they possibly can. But states do have the authority to set caps on it, much like the reference to the price of insulin was capped under the Inflation Reduction Act back in 2023. So the states can do the same thing across a number of pharmaceutical applications.
All right, committee, I'm going to jump in for one moment. You mentioned there that insulin prices were capped under the Inflation Reduction Act. Why am I hearing now about $900 fees for insulin? What broke along the way?
That's a good question. I would have to defer to one of the other experts on that. I do not know the answer to that question. But I do know that it's, you're right, it was imposed by the Inflation Reduction Act, but it has not been successful, particularly.
Okay. All right. Yes, Representative Weichel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To that question, I think research may be able to confirm if I'm right on this, but I think the Inflation Reduction Act caps were specific to Medicare only and not to private insurance.
Yeah, that's right. It's Medicare Part D and Part B. That's right.
All right. So, and I'm just trying to get my head around this. Would that be a matter of, I've heard it described as squeezing a balloon, where we reduce it in one area and that expands the price in other areas? Is that what we're looking at, or is this something entirely different? Anybody? Anyone want to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that's only been passed under Medicare. So as far as commercial insurances, we do not have a cap on insulin here in Kansas. Now, other states have passed that. I have a list. I don't have it right in front of me. But some of them have passed, I think, anywhere from 25 to 30. I think North Dakota's is 25. I think Alabama and some other states are 35. So that's for commercial insurance plans that they've capped that. But right now, referring to the testimony that we were just talking about with the Inflation Act, that was just for Medicare only. And so that did not trickle down to commercial insurance. Once again, I mean, we still have these, like that gentleman had mentioned earlier, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, was it Ben, had said, you don't know what you're going to get when you get there. Literally, you could go there and you could be told, like this young lady said, $700, $800, $900, or you might get there and, you know, maybe something came down for the day. But regardless, and a lot of people, like I said, they can't use those synthetic insulins, and all the analog insulins, Humalog, Novolog, those are the short-acting ones, are anywhere. I've never seen them under $275, $300, somewhere in that cost range. Because that's just what they charge. And they've gone up, as the young lady mentioned, over 1,000%.
And that begs, well, oh no, stay here. Well, I mean, you're the one that jumped, so.
No, go ahead.
Stay here if you can, and if you want to hand it off, that's fine too. But that kind of illustrates what I was talking about. Is the increase in pricing correlated to the caps in other areas? Like,
oh, you're saying
it was
with the
pressed
Medicare
down
cap.
in Medicare, it was pressed down in some states. Is that causing the increase in other areas
No.
for insured customers rather than Medicare?
I would say just what I mentioned earlier. You have 3 companies that are monopolizing the market. You also have the PBMs.
3 is not a monopoly, so let's clarify.
I think that it is when you don't have other independent producers for something like that, for something that's that costly. Yeah, I do think that is monopolizing the market for life-saving drugs. We should open the market. We shouldn't allow these companies to have these kind of patents on these drugs. And why is the U.S. allowing it? We're using the excuse that we're the ones doing all the drug research. Why aren't other companies absorbing this? Why is in Canada it's cheaper in those areas? We, in the U.S., we should be, I think like I said, I think it is criminal that we are charging these kind of prices for life-saving drugs. This should be something, we all are touched by diabetes. We probably know family members, other friends, people that have diabetes that need to take this every day. And that young lady was just mentioning how now she has to use a pen instead of using her medical device, her insulin pump, to be able to regulate her blood sugar. And that causes more problems. My husband used to have terrible highs and lows before he was able to get an insulin pump and have the continuous glucose monitor. So now we're telling people, oh, sorry, we can't pay for that anymore. You're going to have to go to a pen. I mean, that to me is just, are we asking people? We're going to have rehospitalizations. We're going to have more people with diabetes and chronic with these problems that they'll have to go to the hospital for to get these regulated. I mean, if anyone's ever had the DKA, as she mentioned, you are completely disoriented. You don't even know what's going on. It's minutes before you can go into a coma and you could die. And I'm being very serious. I mean, my husband has gone in with low blood sugar. We had to call the ambulance and have glucose administered immediately or he would have died. His blood sugar was literally under 10. And so I think, you know, these are very raw discussions that we need to be having. We, as a state, should be looking at this very seriously. We should be able to help people when it comes to life-saving drugs. These are not optional. And so as a whole, we have to get some kind of control over these. And PBMs and those kinds of things, they are just driving the costs up. And those rebates are not passed on to the client or the patient.
All right, Representative Weichel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To go back to your question of is this kind of the squeezing the balloon analogy, I think this is a case where it's not that at all. I think other states have had caps on insulin prices for years before the Medicare cap went into effect. My understanding is that insulin is one of the cheapest drugs to manufacture. It's very cheap for manufacturers to make, and it truly seems like one of the most black and white issues of like it's just greed. They know they can charge this much because people have to have it to live. And that's all it comes down to. And without us, the state, saying you can't do that in Kansas, they're going to keep doing it here.
Representative Bronk has been waiting patiently for a long time.
So I'm okay, thank you. And so is the gentleman that was on the WebEx still available to us? So you mentioned, so recently there's been some work in the Trump administration. I think they were successful in getting favored nation status. They've also introduced Trump RX, of course, put his name on it. And so you said that we can't wait for the feds to do anything with this, but it looks like the feds are doing something. What's the time frame for that? Is that an incredibly fast reduction in prices in individual states? Is that the slow train to nowhere by the time it gets here? So tell me what's happening with that and why it's incumbent upon us to do something now.
Like everything the federal government does, it's extremely slow. And the negotiations between my understanding is the negotiations between the administration and the big pharma companies is, not fast. So I think that's why we're here at the state level, to encourage you to take action at the state level, which you can do much more efficiently, much faster, and much more effectively. Though I'd like to, for example, in the insulin caps, this was mentioned, price cuts on insulin, 29 states have that in place now. So it's very widespread practice. It's worked all over the country. So it's our belief that the real action is at the state level on this, on price caps, be it insulin or, more broader application that's provided by these drug affordability boards.
So the Inflation Reduction Act dropped that down to $35 as a cap, and so that's what we're trying to do with this bill. You said 29 other states already have similar caps. Is it all $35? Did they follow the Inflation Reduction Act? What was that, 2022 or 2024? I don't recall.
That's a good question. I'm not familiar with the details of the other states. I do know 29 of them have imposed price caps on insulin.
So if I could just say it in a sentence, I think, I don't want to speak for you, if more states do this, then that would propel the feds to act with a bit more rapidity than what they're acting with now, and negotiate something with the three primary drug companies. Is that a fair statement? That if we do this, that would compel them to act?
I don't have insights actually into the priorities that the federal government is going to negotiate, but this, the insulin costs are the most egregious and the most widespread. So I think that's why it was, the Biden administration attempted to address it in the Inflation Reduction Act, but I think it's really incumbent upon the states to protect their own citizens, do it themselves.
When I hear things like, it's just nothing but greed from big pharma, et cetera, I used to recoil at that, but now I tend to agree, and particularly in this kind of an instance, insulin should be one of the least expensive drugs to manufacture. Yet the costs just seem to be outrageous. So anyway, thank you for your answer.
Yes, sir.
Which does bring up an interesting point. Is it a cap on copays or a cap on the cost from the manufacturer that 29 states have passed?
I don't know the answer to that.
All right, very good. That would be relevant for us to look at later on down the road.
Okay.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is going to be for Representative Steens. So I'm only asking you this because, well, I like you, for one thing. But you mentioned analog versus something else.
Oh.
Can you explain to me real quick the
Yeah,
difference?
so what I meant by that is, and thank you, Representative Tarwater, I like you too. The analog is more the short, fast acting, and that was the Novolog and the Humalog. Those are two that are faster acting. The other, more synthetic, there's a couple, I don't know all the names of them right off the top of my head, but there's some, and I didn't write all, because my husband doesn't take those anymore. But there's a synthetic one I know I was told about. I think Walmart was selling that one. I'd have to Google it. If someone has a quick Google, they can Google that name for me. But there are some other ones. And the reason why we're talking about these especially is because these are the ones that a lot of type 1 diabetics use, okay? A lot of type 2 diabetics use different insulin. resources. So the particular ones that I was referring to, most type 1 use because they are faster acting, and so that they can get a steady stream of that, especially if they're on the insulin pump, and that keeps their blood sugar at a nice even keel, where some have spikes, they call them, where you might kind of hit like a low and then you might spike at a certain time. And so you may have to give yourself a different dose, which you can do that with some of the insulin pumps as well. But what's nice about the faster acting, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, because I know we have some diabetic people here, but I know that those can act a lot quicker. And they can give you a nice steady more, so you don't have those, I think Representative Neighbor mentioned like the brittle diabetics where it can drop real quick or spike real quick. And so that gives you a nice even keel. Does that make sense?
It does. And so this legislation could get very expensive if everybody qualifies for whatever they want. Would it be all right with you if we tailored this when we do end up working this, or if we do, more towards the need so that everybody gets what they need rather than what they want, so to help keep the cost down, to not drive up insurance premiums so much?
Well, I would, and Representative Meyer also might want to, go ahead. Yep. Yeah, please.
Chairman Steens.
Representative Steens, or Representative Meyer, go ahead and answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill actually was drafted. There's a fiscal note listed in there if you want to take a look at it. It actually isn't, it's not going to cost a whole lot of money. And as far as the insurance companies that I've spoken with and working with this bill for the last 4 years, actually, it doesn't seem as though it would increase rates for other commercially insured individuals either. And if you look at the fiscal note, it'll describe that as well. But no, it doesn't appear to be a very cost prohibitive program. And in the 29 other states where it has already been enacted, they haven't seen any issues with this increasing the rates on their insured individuals as much as you would think, because once again, as Representative Steens stated, this is a vastly overpriced drug that is required by individuals to survive, and it doesn't cost much to manufacture at all. Mm-hmm. But thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you for everything. That leads me to my final question, and the chairman kind of touched on it. We've heard a lot today about the big three and big pharma and how absorbently greedy they may be. Whether or not they're trying to recoup their costs or whatever the excuse is. This bill does not target the big three. It does not target big pharmacy. This bill targets insurance companies. And you can't sit here and tell me that insurance companies aren't going to increase costs to the consumer because of this. Why not target the big three and demand that they sell the drug to our insurance companies for less? That would be the most efficient way. Then it doesn't raise everybody's premiums. Because I can tell you this, insurance companies, they operate on a combined ratio of sometimes over 100%. And that means their loss ratio plus their expenses is over 100%, and they make the difference on their investments. And the more that you put on the insurance companies' backs without addressing the real problem is what drives up insurance premiums. And so why doesn't this bill focus on the supply, not the people that are paid for this? I mean, that's why insurance got so expensive, is we always demand that the insurance company pays for all this stuff. Why not target the real problem here? Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and defer to Representative Myers again, because I know she's done a lot of work on this bill, more than I have. But you're right. I mean, that's a great question.
Thank you, Representative. For giving the mic to Representative Meyer. That's my job, you know. Yes, Representative Meyer, would you care to address the question?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you, Representative and Representative Tarwater. So one of the reasons why I was unable to approach it like that, my original bill, the original draft from 4 years ago did address the issues with pharmaceutical companies. And after working with the Department of Insurance and the insurers and pharmaceutical companies to try to figure out how this would be manageable, that was taken out of the bill because it was that was the cost prohibitive part. We can talk more about that offline if you'd like, because that's really in the weeds, and I don't know that the committee really needs to hear about all that, but I would love to address that with you sometime.
All right, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, I would counter that PBMs are driving up insurance prices. They're the ones that are doing that. And so I have a question for you. Do you think that this is obviously a huge problem, and researching it here, listening to you, you said $4. My computer says $1. Those researchers wanted to pay $1 because they wanted it out to everyone.
Yes.
And that it does cost between $7 and $13 a vial. And it was found in University of Toronto in Canada, so not even in the United States, in 1921. So something is very, very wrong. So my question to you is, this adding a cap is not necessarily going to get to the heart of the issue. Do you think that there is a PBM reform sweeping the United States, and there's a bill that we're going to hear Wednesday? Do you think that that could be a way to show transparently what's happening with the manufacturer of the drugs and how they're passing on rebates or those costs to PBMs and insurance companies? Do you think that could also solve the problem?
Thank you, Representative Williams. Yes, I would say that is a start. I still think that we do need to look at caps as a whole, but yes, the PBM reform absolutely needs to be done, because those rebates and things that are passed on, they are not given to the client. In fact, they're not even given to the pharmacies. So a lot of times the pharmacies are like, look, we just have to charge what they tell us. Like, this is what our cost is. So they have to get back those costs somehow. And if you look at it as a whole, like you said, why would something that was sold for $1, okay, I've read $1, $4, depending on where you go. You look at that and you say, we've had this drug for over 100 years. How could we possibly be sitting here discussing the fact now that we've driven up this cost for a life-saving drug that people have to have? We're talking about something that they cannot live without, because people used to die from diabetes. They just died. I mean, there was no way to cure them. There was no way to regulate those blood sugars because their pancreas was gone and could not do that. So I'm sitting here thinking, here we are, 2026, over 100 years later, and we're having these discussions over the fact that we cannot regulate these drug prices. And so I know I use the 3 drug companies, but there is something to say about that too, and I agree with you. I mean, that's something else that we should take a look at. I'm not sure how to break up those monopolies, but if you have an idea about it, let me know.
Well, thank you for that. And I also agree with you that it's criminal. And there is a medical antitrust bill up at the federal level, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But the top 3 insurance companies are also owned by PBMs. So it is a huge problem. Transparency is needed.
Thank you.
Representative Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we could get the guy, the Americans for Lower Drug Prices, if he's still around, I would appreciate it.
That would be Michael Lester.
Yes, sir.
All right. Again, since you're from a national group, you'd be the best one to ask. So again, the bill we are looking at, it just limits the copay to $35. So that what any insurance company would charge is $35. It doesn't affect the price that the insurance company is being charged by the drug manufacturer or whatever middlemen, PBMs or whoever. So this is strictly about copays. And so in your testimony, you say in Kansas around 244,000 adults have been diagnosed with diabetes. Just if you took the hypothetical of that this $35 copay is $100 less than what the insurance company is being charged as it would be. I mean, that's like $24 million a month or $293 million a year in displaced costs. I mean, again, the big pharmaceutical company is still getting its money like it was before. It's just that much cost. I mean, our commerce chairman here alluded to the very same fact. It's just being shifted to everybody else who has Blue Cross health insurance. I mean, I can empathize, but how is that not just ultimately kind of smoke and mirrors? It doesn't really. I mean, you're not really solving the problem in the sense of the high drug costs. You're just going to spread it out over more people, and thus it doesn't seem so bad.
I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, no, the question would be, how is this type of legislation genuinely helpful when it doesn't actually reduce the raw cost of the drug? All it does is limit a copay, which just means everybody else in the insurance pool is just going to have to make up the difference.
Well, I can't really speak to the details of the numbers in Kansas. I'm terrible at math. I assume you got it right. But this is being done all across the country. So I think the ultimate goal of these, of CAP here and in other states for other drugs is to put pressure on the pharmaceutical companies to bring their prices down to market levels. Like that's ultimately the goal. It's a huge goal. It's going to be difficult, not easy. That you can see the president's attempting to do it at the federal level, and he's got all the leverage in the world, and it's not easy.
If I would just say, so, in the sense, drug manufacturing is a type of business where your marginal costs are extremely low, but your upfront investment costs are incredibly high. I'm not in that industry, but I do know enough about business to know that that does create kind of a unusual pricing environment. I don't quite get how, limiting. You're still not, unless you get the raw drug company to drop their price that they're charging the health insurance companies. I don't exactly see how we've done anything by passing this, except for spreading the price around to everybody else in the insurance pool.
Well, as I said, that's the goal. And it's not an easy goal, and I think it's realistic. The fact is that pharma companies also have massive margins, and they also have massive profits, like far beyond, anything that's reasonable. So I can't cast them as the good actor here.
All right. No, fair enough. Thank you.
All right. Representative Haskins has been lulled into sleep. Oh, he's in deep concentration.
Everybody had an interest, and so I was just listening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I will jump in and say we do have one more proponent on WebEx, so let's wrap this up so that she isn't sitting out there into the wee hours.
I will be quick. Representative Steen. I just, point of clarification.
Yes.
You keep calling it a monopoly. Right? But it is an oligopoly in which you have three corporations monopolizing the industry. So if anybody comes back and says it's not a monopoly, you're right, it's an oligopoly, but it's still a monopoly, all right? The last thing I would tell you is, has there been any consideration of demanding from the Attorney General, Kansas Attorney General, to formally file with the Department of Justice to look into how, and join other states, and look into how these manufacturers, as well as the PBMs, but focusing on the manufacturers, are violating the Sherman Act for price gouging? Because there are a huge, and my colleague from Hutchinson is correct, there is a large cost of increase when you introduce the medicine, but it's been around for 100 years. And there should be criminal charges, $900 to $1 billion, that these companies are paying for what they're doing. Has there been consideration to say, Kansas Attorney General, please follow up, please do the job and protect the citizens?
Thank you for the question. I cannot speak to that. I have not spoken to the Attorney General myself. But I wanted, would you mind if I readdress just a minute for the insurance companies?
You can talk as long as you want, but the chair was very specific.
No, that's okay, because what I wanted to say is, somebody had asked just previously too, but no, I have not spoken to the Attorney General directly, but I don't think it's a bad idea, that caps could also reduce the leverage insurers have when negotiating prices. So basically, you have to remember, when patients face these high insulin costs, some may skip doses or delay refills. So, that right there, you're lowering the out-of-pocket risk for these patients. Also, predictable spending. Caps make insulin costs more predictable for insurers. So instead of covering these wildly variable out-of-pockets, that's another thing that you have to consider when you're looking at this. And patients with affordable access to insulin are more likely to stay enrolled. So I would argue those points as well, but your point about the Attorney General, I think he would have a personal interest in this as well, if I might add, because I think as a whole, like I said, we know many people with type 1 diabetes, and this is something I've been researching for quite some time. And when I discovered like the history of it and what's been going on, it's just every time I'm like, why are we still paying these kinds of costs for insulin? This is just ridiculous. Sorry, I'm adding my own personal.
You've done an excellent job, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Excellent. Now, we do have another proponent who's been sitting very patiently via WebEx. Amber Beck, I apologize for the delay, but are you with us?
I am.
Very good.
So I'm actually going to bring a different kind of view into what's going on here. So my name is Amber Beck, and I'm the executive director for Caron Health, and I run the statewide charitable pharmacy for uninsured patients. And some of you heard me talk a couple last week. And so what I want you guys to think about when you guys are looking at this bill is, you know, what we don't want in the state of Kansas is we don't want people to start thinking that insurance is a bad thing. So when I get clients, it means that they don't have insurance, right? They're looking for those opportunities and those high costs, or, you know, when they lose insurance, maybe they've lost their job, then they come see me, you know, and, you know, we talk to them and we are like celebrating when they get insurance again. You know, but then the cost is out of reach for them for their medications when they've been getting them from me. So uninsured patients can get oral meds from me for $10 for 90-day supplies. And then we charge insulin for $20 for a 90-day supply. And so when they hear that that's the opportunity, and then they get insurance, and then they no longer can use us, right? And so now they're like, you know what, I'm going to cancel my insurance. I don't want to have this as, you know, because I can't afford it now, even with the excitement of getting insurance. So, you know, we really have to think about, you know, are we talking about insurance being a bad word now in our state with all of these rising cost of medications, right? That's what we don't want. We don't want patients that can't afford their meds after the excitement of getting access to insurance and getting access to doctors, that now they can't get access to their meds. So I know you guys have had lots of conversations about this, and I, you know, truly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys about this and kind of give you a different light and what it means to be uninsured, low income opportunity, and then working with patients who are insured, who still call me crying, who still need to have those advocations for themselves, talking with doctors, talking with insurance companies. That's why I'm here. That's why I continue to fight for these individuals and continue to fight for the underserved. So I will stand for any questions that you guys have on, you know, kind of looking at this from a different light.
All right. Be careful with that can of worms. Committee, questions for Amber? Yes, Representative Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Amber. Thank you for being here today. Could you elaborate a little bit on how this, a bill of this nature might not only help the patients that you serve, like you described pretty well, but also your organization itself when negotiating pricing to help provide insulin and medications like that?
So as a charitable pharmacy, we actually don't work with insurance companies at all. We do receive donated meds from 3 national organizations to be able to do so, you know, but you know, that's why we started the pharmacy, is because we were helping individuals cover cost of copays. And, you know, when they didn't have insurance, it wasn't a viable thing for me to be able to do. It was just a Band-Aid. And, you know, and I still work with individuals who are insured to try to help them with their copays, you know, and I still have to you. We do also carry diabetic supplies. We are not able to provide any continual glucose meters. It's not even in the realm of affordability for us. And we are a pharmacy, and it's not something that we can pay for. And then we also don't carry any insulin pumps due to, we just can't afford them. You know, we're providing access, and that's just not something that the cost allowed to do. We do carry test strips and glucose readers, and we do carry 3 different types of insulin. And the synthetic insulin, by the way, the one you guys are talking about with Walmart, you don't have to have a prescription for those. So I don't know if that's always a viable option for somebody who has diabetes or even type 1 diabetes. I wouldn't. Thanks. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I'm a lot funner.
All right, committee, any further questions for Amber? No, seeing none. All right, well, thanks for your patience with sticking with us throughout the day.
Yeah, you guys have a good
All
day.
right, you too. All right, committee, I have no one else listed as a proponent. Representative Meyer, however, if you haven't already said what you wanted to say, now would be a great opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. First of all, I really appreciate the opportunity to have an informational hearing on this bill. I've been working on it since I came into the legislature about 5 years ago. I am a type 1 diabetic. I was diagnosed when I was 12 years old. And speaking to diabetic ketoacidosis, that's actually how I was first diagnosed. I went into a coma when I was 12, and I was hospitalized for 3 or 4 months in order to get back into condition. And I almost died. My father was also a type 1 diabetic. He was diagnosed when he was 9 years old. And I know that they say it skips a generation, but it certainly didn't for us. That was something that was so cost prohibitive when I was growing up and really, really strained our budget. Not only that, but my father ended up passing away at the age of 47 due to multiple complications from long-term diabetes and also the fact that he and I both rationed insulin, shared syringes, shared test strips, things of that nature as I was growing up. We had a really difficult time caring for ourselves, and I thought when I became an adult and was able to have access to commercial insurance, that would help a lot. But as Representative Steens had mentioned, even with insurance, a lot of times we are paying out of pocket anywhere upwards of $300 plus a month simply for insulin, and that does not include the supplies. I am now able to be on an insulin pump, which only requires 1 type of insulin, but if you are not on a pump, you have to have a long-acting and a short-acting. This is truly life-sustaining medication. Without it, I would die. Now, I know some people might find joy in that, but I don't think anyone in this committee would. I'm just kidding, gallows humor from the type 1 diabetic. But truly, this is something that is so desperately needed, and I've spoken with people all across the country and here in our state about this for many years. We're talking parents of young children who just want to make sure that they can afford to take care of their children as they age, and then, adult type 1 diabetics like myself who are very lucky to have access to the medication that we need to survive and also the insurance to do so. But I would like to also share this, even though I do have our wonderful insurance through the legislature. Each year that I've been here, I've had to meet my deductible out of pocket, which is about $5,000 before insurance comes in and starts taking care of anything. So what that means is that at the beginning of the year, I basically have to take all of my paychecks and buy my insulin, testing supplies, and pump supplies. And I don't exactly have a paycheck the first couple months because I need to make sure that I can survive. And so that's one of the reasons, hearing from everyone across the country and in the state and having the lived experience and unfortunately losing my father at such a young age is one of the reasons why I thought it was so important to bring this bill. And I know that it's a very important bipartisan issue. Everyone, is touched by someone living with diabetes. And of course, there are many different ways that we can approach this, but this was the simplest and most effective and most tried and true option. So I really appreciate everyone's support and listening to us today. Thank you.
All right, I hesitate to say questions for Representative Meyer. Nope, never mind, too slow. Oh. All right, with that, I will close proponent testimony. I have no one listed as neutral or opponent, probably because this is an informational hearing. Would anyone care to speak as either neutral or opponent? Mr. Weems, this is your opportunity. All right. Seeing none, I'll close neutral and opponent testimony and close the informational hearing on 2684. With that, committee, we will be meeting on Wednesday, have a couple of bills to work and a bill to hear, so we pack a lunch. We're going to be here for a spell. Until that time, however, we are adjourned.